You lay your heart out more than you usually do, because that protects you, it guards you, it forms a wall around you. It makes you accountable to other human beings, which is protection. And then the other thing is you increase your study time. Here you go, Mark. So those two things are what you're supposed to do during Bein HaMitzrim. The one thing you do not do, you do not hide yourself away. When danger is coming, in fact, do you remember Y2K? Yeah. This has got a ring to it. Remember Y2K? And everybody was storing stuff in their, wherever they stored it, and they hid away and they were hiding. I had all these Christians who quoted this verse to me in Proverbs, that the wise man, when wickedness, when evil comes, the wise man hides himself, and the stupid man goes on and pays for it. And I told them, that's not what that means. It means you hide yourself in God. We do that in Judaism. Oh, I don't want to hear about that, it's Jewish. And they went on and they spent all their money and they went broke. And I did just fine. So what you do not do is hide yourself away from the community. You hide in the community. You bury yourself in good stuff.
Hide in plain sight.
Hide in plain sight, right. Yeah, it's not time to go in your foxhole. It's time to do stealth. Does that make sense? Yeah? No? Yeah. Correct? Okay. I'm asking an army man. He knows. Okay. All right. I have a short teaching today. No applause? Sure. I mean, after that marathon last week, you know, there's a time for that. There's a time for marathon, a time for short, and a time for in between. So, because it's a short teaching, don't interrupt me with a bunch of stuff, and then we can move forward. All right. So we are in Pinchas. Yeah, right. Pinchas, Numbers 25 is where we're going to be. Pinchas is Phineas is the way it's pronounced in English. Pinchas. But we're not going to look at Pinchas at all. We've done that 2 years in a row. This year we're going to look at something completely different. I need the clicker, by the way. Do I have the clicker?
It's probably still on the other.
Okay. Alrighty. Okay, so this is called the greatest to the least, and that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at what's called rank in the kingdom. Rank in the kingdom. Now, if you're new to Judaism, or if you're if you're less than 3 years old in Judaism, you need to know this. If you've been around at least 3 years, you've probably heard it, you probably understand it. If you haven't, you don't. It's that simple. And the reason is that this is an issue that the church simply does not address. And they don't address it for very good reason. Because in the New Testament, it's spiritualized. At least when you read it, it sounds spiritualized. It sounds like those cryptic statements like, if you rub with your right hand, your left hand is free, which means your left hand is free, leaving your right hand to rub. You know those kind of cryptic reverse, inverse statements? Lots of them concerning this issue. And so when the church reads it, when people in the church read it, they're not familiar with what's being quoted in the Tanakh, and so it sounds very cryptic and weird, which is fine. Problem is, it's a huge thing in Judaism. So I'm going to try to open it up for you from the beginning of the story so you can understand it. Let's go to Bamidbar in the wilderness, chapter 26. Now I've written it, just the part that we're going to look at up on the screen. These are those, verse 51 through 56. These are those who were numbered of the sons of Israel, 601,730. It goes through all 12 tribes, gives a number of each tribe, and then it sums it up here in verse 51. Then the Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, among these, the land shall be divided for an inheritance according to the number of names. Now, all believers want to know what their inheritance is. And they talk about, it's great. We should know what our inheritance is. We know that our inheritance is in the kingdom. But if you don't know that, what are you left with? You're left with, what am I going to get now? What am I going to get now? What's my inheritance now? But remember, when the Jewish people were wandering in the Midbar and they came to Kadesh and they stayed there for 38 years, they were on their way to go into not a land, but a day, a kingdom. And they didn't get to go in. So, in picture form, when they go into the land, in picture form, the land was to be divided according to the number of each tribe. Bigger tribe, bigger land. Smaller tribe, smaller land. That's basically what it's saying. Among these, the land shall be divided for an inheritance. But what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out what this means spiritually. What does this mean spiritually? According to the number of names. To the larger you shall increase their inheritance, and to the smaller you shall diminish their inheritance. Each shall be given their inheritance according to those who were numbered of them. But the land shall be divided by lot. They shall receive their inheritance according to the names of the tribes of their fathers, according to the selection by lot. Their inheritance shall be divided between the larger and the smaller. So, it sort of makes sense logically. If you got more people, you need more land. But that's not what it's saying. That's part of what it's saying. But how do you make that fit spiritually? If you got a big church, you get more in the kingdom. Basically, that's what you end up with. If you got a big church, you get more in the kingdom. Basically. So, what we have to do is figure out what this is really saying. Eileen, can you get these to Debbie, please? All right, so when they were in the Midbar, in the wilderness, remember this is how their camps looked. You had 4 sides, and then you had around the tabernacle 4 sides for the priests and the Levites, close to the tabernacle, and then the enormous camps surrounding it. Now, when they were numbered, they only numbered the men, and only 20 years old and upward. And there was 601,000 of them. Not including women, not including children, boy or girl, below the age of 20, not including servants, not including mixed multitude of Gentiles, just the men who are in the army, 601,000. And here's what it was like when they were in the wilderness. So, here in this picture, all the camps look the same size, don't they? Right? Okay, they weren't. They were like this. Reuben had 43,730. Shimeon. Now, these are in the order that they're given in the Torah. I've numbered them according to the order that we're given them in the Torah. They're not according to rank, they're not according to size, they're not according to anything, just the way they're given in the Torah. And the way they're given in the Torah is like this. Reuben, Shimeon, Gad. Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. Ephraim, Manasseh, Benjamin, Dan, Asher, Naphtali. That's how they're given in the Torah. So that's the way we read them. Reuben had 43,000, Shimeon had 22,000, Gad had 40,000, Judah had 76,000. That's a lot. That's almost twice as many as everybody else. Yeah. Issachar, 64,000, big. Zebulun, 60,000, big. Manasseh, 52,700. Ephraim, 32,000. Benjamin, 45,000. Dan, 64,000. Dan had the smallest landmass up north. And they had 64,000. Why? Because they had landmass down by Judah also. So they had split lands. 64,000. Asher, 53,000. And then Naphtali, 45,000. Now that's just the order in which they're given in the Bible, because that's the order in which they're laid out in the wilderness. But if we put them in rank according to size, it's completely different. Judah's first, and then Dan, and then Issachar, then Zebulun, then Asher, then Manasseh, then Benjamin, then Naphtali, then Reuben. Reuben is way down 9th. Then Gad, then Ephraim, then Shimeon. Shimeon lived down by Judah, and they had the smallest amount of people. And they were in the landmass of Judah. They were like an island surrounded by the land of Judah. So the verses that we're going to focus on are these. To the larger, you shall increase their inheritance. Now what I want you to do is think about, where do you stand? Where do you stand? Like if the kingdom came right now, how much authority would you have? How much authority would you have? How many people would you have under you? Okay? To the larger, you shall increase their inheritance, and to the smaller, you shall diminish their inheritance. Each shall be given their inheritance according to those who were numbered of them. All right, so what we have to do is we have to establish in God's sight, what is that rank determined by? Because you know as well as I do, a mega church with 50,000 people in it, how do they determine rank? As opposed to Church of God of John the Baptist and Jesus Christ, Church of God in Christ. Mount Nebo Missionary Baptist Church with 42 people. I mean, who determines the rank?
Chabad. 20.
Yeah, the Chabad. Chabad. You know, the Orthodox Jews, the Hasidic Jews, 20 people. I mean, who determines the rank? Who determines, and what is the rank, the gradation by which God says, you are big and you're small?
Responsibility.
Well, let's find out. Matthew chapter 5. Here's what rank is based on. But remember, this is the end of the book. This is Yeshua, so that means he's quoting scripture. This is not coming out of some ethereal, mythical Christ words. This is also in the Torah. What he's doing is saying what the Torah says. And the Torah says this, 5:17 through 19. Don't think that I came to abolish the Torah or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill. Everybody who knows about Messianic Judaism loves that verse. That verse, for me, is a throwaway. It's the next verse that counts.
Right.
The next one, actually verse 19, which is the big one. 18 and 19 are the big ones. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest letter. What's the smallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet? Huh? Yod, right, Yod. Or stroke. Now the stroke is a tagin, which is a crown that's on top of 7 of the Hebrew letters. Shall pass away from the Torah until all is accomplished. Has everything in the prophets been accomplished? When is everything in the prophets going to be accomplished? In the kingdom, right? So let's read it that way. Until heaven and earth pass away, not the smallest, not any yod or the tagin shall pass away from the Torah until the kingdom is over. Until the kingdom is over. Whoever then, now look at this, whoever then annuls one of the least of these mitzvot. Anybody know what the least, it's called the smallest commandment is, the smallest mitzvah? Anybody know what that is in Judaism? It's the tzipor, the bird's nest.
Oh, yeah.
The bird's nest is called the smallest commandment. It says in the scriptures, if you come across a bird's nest, in Deuteronomy, I think it's 20, when you come across a bird's nest and it's got a mother bird in it with the eggs, you cannot take the eggs and the mother bird simultaneously. You got to shoo away the mother bird, then you can take the eggs. And it's an amazing picture of Judaism. But whoever annuls one of the least of the mitzvot, kippah, tzitzit, tefillin, Torah, Shabbat, new moon, festivals, fasts, kosher laws, whoever annuls the tiniest one of them and says, you should not keep kosher. You should not follow Judaism. shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. Does it say they're kicked out of the kingdom of heaven? No. It says they're part of the kingdom of heaven, but they're least in rank. They're not out of the kingdom. They're just really small in the kingdom. Constantine, if he was born again, which I seriously doubt, and he set up all these laws to outlaw Judaism, if he was born again, he's going to be in the kingdom. He's going to be real small. He's going to be a bootlicker. And the same with everybody else who does away with any of the mitzvot. Doesn't mean they're not born again or they're not in the kingdom. It simply means they're smaller in rank. Does that make sense? I mean, to me, that's pretty compassionate. And then the rest of the verse. But whoever keeps the mitzvot, even the smallest of the mitzvot, whoever keeps Judaism and teaches Judaism and teaches the mitzvot shall be called what? Great in the kingdom of heaven. Makes sense? That's the plumb line by which God judges every single born-again believer. So you could say the rule of judging every believer is Judaism. Make sense? Only people that are in the kingdom. That's the rule by which everyone is measured by God who's in the kingdom. Now, if that doesn't freak you out, something's wrong. Because that flips the whole world right side up. That flips the entire body of Messiah right side up. That flips all of Messianic Judaism right side up. Because don't think Messianic Jews believe this. They don't. They don't believe that. I mean, if you say to a normative Messianic Jew, what's the rank by which God judges all of his people, like if they're big or small, if they're great or small? They're not going to say Judaism. They wouldn't say that. Well, the Lord judges by his own wonderful standards of mercy and compassion and grace. That's what most have told me. But the truth is that whether we want it to be or we don't want it to be, the rule by which rank is determined in God's kingdom is how much Judaism you do and teach. Means you got to learn it first. Okay, let's go back to Genesis 26. Remember, Yeshua didn't say this in a vacuum. He's the Word made flesh, so he's quoting Torah. And he says, it says about Abraham, 26 verse 5. Verse 4. I will multiply your seed, he's talking to Isaac, as the stars of heaven, and will give your seed all these lands. And by your seed, all the nations, all the Gentiles of the earth will be blessed. Why? Because Abraham listened to me. It does not say obeyed. Shema lani. Listened to me. And kept my, this is actually ma'amad, which is the standing things. It means the cycle of the priests and Levites is the ma'amad. What? Abraham kept the cycle of the priests and Levites? If you don't believe me, look up every single verse in the Torah that says ma'amad, and that's what you're going to find. Not just the Torah, the Tanakh, all the way to Ezekiel, all the way to Chronicles, the last book in the Old Testament, in the Jewish book, in the Jewish Bible. They all say ma'amad is the cycle of the Levites, the priests, etc. So, because he listened to me and kept my ma'amad, my mitzvot, my chokim, and my Torot. Abraham kept the mitzvot 430 years before the mitzvot were given, right? This is 430 years before the mitzvot were given, but he kept them. So if he can do it, Christians can do it.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
All right.
The blessings of Abraham.
Right. That's where the Christian mind immediately goes. The blessings of Abraham. Well, okay, what are the blessings of Abraham? He had one thing that nobody else had. That was his blessing. What was it? Says, what? Say it again? Right. Says it over and over and over in the New Testament. You should know this. Faith. Faith. The faith of Abraham. That's how he got faith. He did Judaism. He did Judaism. That's what gave him faith. That's the rank. That's the rank. If you have great faith, great understanding, that means you did a lot of Judaism and you taught from it. If you have very little faith, that means you didn't do Judaism. It didn't talk to you. It didn't preach to you. Didn't learn from it. And so you didn't teach it to other people, and you're going to be small. So it's up to you. It's up to us. Totally up to us. So he set the standard. Now, we're going to go to the verse that I want to cram into your brain, a picture. I want to make this picture solid in your head every time this issue comes up. Matthew chapter 8. Matthew chapter 8. This is kind of like, if you had to have a picture in your head of the whole matter of rank, this is the picture I want you to have in your head, because it's a picture that Yeshua gave us. And he makes this picture for us because he calls together a whole bunch of Torah and snaps it all together into a picture. So here's the picture. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 11. I do this every week. Mark, can you get my old man glasses from the box, please? Thank you. So, Abraham had great faith because he kept the Torah and taught the Torah. In verse 11 it says this, Yeshua said, I say to you that many will come from east and west and recline with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Now, so that your mind doesn't start going, well, is that the Messianic kingdom? In the other parallel passage in Luke 13:29, check it. It says, kingdom of God. Thank you. So, Abraham had great faith because he kept the Torah and taught the Torah. In verse 11 it says this, Yeshua said, I say to you that many will come from east and west and recline with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. Now, so that your mind doesn't start going, well, is that the Messianic kingdom? In the other parallel passage in Luke 13:29, check it. It says kingdom of God. Kingdom of God, kingdom of heaven, Messianic kingdom, they're all the same thing. They're all the same thing. So don't start thinking spiritually about this. It's very physical, it's very real. In the kingdom, many are going to be called to come recline, that means have a feast, with who? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the rank. That's the rank. Abraham's the big daddy. He's got the most faith. His son had the next amount of faith. Jacob or Israel had the next amount of faith. And it goes down from there. We don't do this nowadays. I can't think of a situation where anybody does it. Maybe people do, but I don't know it. When you go to a banquet, like a wedding banquet or some kind of banquet, a presentation banquet, there's like a table where all the dignitaries and high muckety-mucks sit, right?
Yeah.
Well, those high muckety-mucks always go sit there because that's where they're told to sit, so you go sit there. But it wasn't like that in ancient days. In ancient days, there was no assigned seating. It was Abraham's at the head of the table, then Isaac, then Jacob, then, lesser and lesser and lesser. Which means you have to know your rank. So there's a big G up there at the head of the table. He's got a lot of faith. I don't have so much. I'm going to sit down here at the end.
That's the picture that we're going to talk more about. So here's what I want you to, this picture of rank in the kingdom at a banquet is the picture I want you to have in your head, which we're going to get back to in a minute. Okay, so let's just look at just plain old rank in the Bible to start establishing how this works. Genesis 12:2, Abraham, God says to Abraham, I shall make you a goy gadol. What does that mean? Gadol means big, great. What does goy mean? What does goy mean?
Unbelievable.
Nation. No, it does not mean unbelievers. It means nation.
Like Gentiles?
Gentiles. Goy. Goy means nation or Gentile. That's all. It doesn't mean unbeliever. It doesn't mean heathen. It just means nation. It does mean I'm not a Jew. But when Abraham was around, it didn't mean that. It just meant a great nation. Goy gadol. So, what we're going to look at is the greatest to the least. Great is gadol. Least, there's three different words for it. There's katan, which means small. There's tzair, which means diminished or least, lesser than. And there's acharit, which means last. So they're all synonyms for the same thing. Greatest to least. Great is gadol. So Abraham is told, I'm going to make you a goy gadol, a great Gentile, great nation. Genesis 17:20, God says to Ishmael, God says, don't worry, Abraham, I'm going to make him a goy gadol. I'm going to increase his people and I'm going to make him a goy gadol. So, in this sense, gadol means lots of people. Lots of people. Then in Genesis 18:18, same thing. God says, but he adds a word to it. He says, Abraham, I'm going to make you a goy gadol va'atzum. Atzum. This means mighty. Atzum. A great and mighty nation. A goy gadol va'atzum. We're going to see that again. Then it says in Genesis 39:9, God says, the Torah says about Yosef, Pharaoh tells him, nobody is going to be more gadol than you in all my house. So that means he had rank. He had great rank. Who was the top in that rank? Pharaoh. And right under him, Joseph, and then all the other servants. And remember, he's a servant, but he has great rank. Chapter 41, verse 40. Pharaoh also tells him, only in the throne will I be more gadol than you. Then Genesis 46:3, Israel is told this, I want you to go to Egypt, and there I will make a goy gadol out of you, out of Israel. This is real. Israel became a great nation in Egypt, a goy gadol. Who did God first say that I'm going to make you a goy gadol to? Abraham. And now it's happened in Egypt with the children of Israel. I'm going to make you into a goy gadol. And then in Leviticus 19:15, this is a little bit different kind of rank. This is a little bit different kind of rank. Leviticus 19:15 is talking to the Levites, the priests, the judges, and says, I don't want you to defer, like give in to the poor, or to the gadol, or to the great. Don't give in to the poor or to the great. So in this rank, who's the least?
Poor.
The poor. So this is about money. So there can be a rank with lots of people. There can be a rank with riches, with money. And there can be a rank with spiritual things. All right? But remember, God, all he's doing is trying to lay out the patterns for Israel so that they can understand rank. And then in 1 Chronicles, let's go to this one. 1 Chronicles 12, verse 15. This is talking about, I believe, the tribe of Gad or Asher. Maybe it's Asher. 1 Chronicles 12, verse 15. These are the ones who crossed the Jordan in the first month. What? 1 Chronicles 12. Oh, it's verse 14 in the English Bible, 15 in the Jewish Bible. These are the sons of Gad, captains of the army. He who was least, katan, smallest, least, was equal to 100. And he who was gadol, greatest, was equal to 1,000.
Right.
This is rank. So now there's rank, literal rank in the army. This is where rank in the army came from. It's authority. Rank in the army is about authority, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you can have rank according to numbers. You can have rank according to money. You can have rank according to authority. The one about authority is the one we want. That's the one we want to look at. All right, 2 Chronicles 34. Let's look at that. Since we're in Chronicles. 2 Chronicles 34, verse 30. The king went up to the house of the Lord, and all the men of Judah, the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the priests, the Levites, and all the people, from the Gadol to the Katan. And he read in their hearing at the words, all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of the Lord. Now this is strange. What is this greatest to least based on? Is it based on money?
I don't know.
Is it based on rank in the army? No, because it's talking about the women and the children and the wives and the priests and the Levites and everybody. It's talking about everybody in Judah. So it's not talking about numbers of people, is it? Because it's everybody in Judah. So this has got to be something else.
Yeah.
This has got to be based on authority. Authority.
Maybe.
Who did the most Torah? Who taught the most Torah? Because that's our plumb line. That's our standard. That's our plumb line. Who did and taught the most Torah? Of all the people in Judah and the people of Levi, the priests and the Levites. So you could be some schlub who, makes beer for a living down in some desert town in Judah, and you have more authority than one of the priests who teach in the temple. So obviously this authority, this greatest to least, is based on something. So what I'm going to do is open up for you and show you what it's based on. Isaiah chapter 60. Look at this, Isaiah chapter 60. This is talking about the Messianic kingdom. And all of chapter 60 is about all the Gentiles bringing all their stuff to the temple, to build the temple and to glorify it and to bring money to the priests and the Levites and Judah and to bless the Jewish people. And it's in the kingdom. So in verse 22, it says, verse 21, all your people will be righteous. They will possess the land forever. The branch of my planting, the work of my hands, that I may be glorified. The smallest one, the katan, will become a clan. And the least one, a mighty nation, a goy gadol. The least one. Now this is the word acharit, means afterward, the leftovers, the afterward one. The one who's at the back of the pack is going to be a goy gadol. Like who? Abraham. Like Abraham. In the kingdom, the smallest one is going to be like Abraham, like a goy gadol. Like Israel, like a goy gadol when he came in Egypt. They'll have all the faith. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So in the kingdom, there's still going to be rank. There's still going to be least and greatest. And everything in between. From the katan to the gadol. Actually, this is the word katan and sa'ir, afterward. Katan and sa'ir will be a goy atzum, a mighty nation. All right, now, there's 3 passages in Jeremiah that two of them say that all the priests, that all the prophets are greedy for gain. They are disgusting to me from the katan to the Gadol. Every single priest is greedy for gain. From the Katan priest to the Gadol priest. The Gadol priest is greedy for gain. Get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess so.
How did that priest get to be Gadol in the first place? Is he great because of money, because of authority, or because of the amount of people he's got? Money. Because they're greedy for gain. He says it. He says they're all greedy for gain. From the Gadol to the Katan. Look at Jeremiah 6.
So the one who's got the most money to the least money.
Right. From the greatest amount of money to the least amount of money. And we know this because they were horrible, horrible people. They were not authoritative in the Torah. They weren't. And yet they're called greatest to the least. Jeremiah 6:13. We don't have to guess at this stuff. God always defines his terms. For from the least of them, he's talking about the priests and the prophets. For from the least of them, even to the greatest of them, from the Katan to the Gadol, everyone is greedy for cash. And from the prophet, even to the priest. So, and everybody feels falsic, so they can rip each other off. This is about money. This is like Leviticus. Don't make any judgment that favors the poor against the rich, or the rich against the poor. You got to stay, even-handed with everybody. That's about money. And so it is here. It's also in chapter 8, verse 10. God says the very same thing.
Yeah.
But then God turns it around in the same prophet, Jeremiah, and he says that because of the new covenant, everything flips. Everything flips. When Yeshua comes, everything flips. So that those who are looked at as Gadol are really Katan. And those who are looked at as Katan are really Gadol. The first shall be last and the last shall be first. Right?
Yeah.
The Roshim, the Roshim shall be Acharit. And the Acharit shall be Roshim. The first shall be last. And the last shall be first. Same exact concept. So it all depends on what your plumb line is that you measure it by. Okay, Jeremiah 31, verse 34. This is about the new covenant. And we know that because of the new covenant, that's why Yeshua came. He cut a covenant with everyone so that they could have the Torah written on their heart. Verse 34. Well, verse 33.
Yeah.
This is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel after those days. I will put my Torah within them, and on their heart I will write it. And I will be their God, and they will be my people. And they shall not teach again each man his neighbor, and each man his brother, saying, Lata'at et Adonai, know the Lord. For they shall all know me, from the Katan to the Gadol. They will all know me. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more. So, because of the forgiveness of sin, what happens? Everything gets flopped. And so people no longer are allowed to judge by money, and by power, and by mega church. They are now to judge according to the standard of, I will put what in their heart? Torah. And that's the measurement, that's the plumb line. Judaism is the plumb line by which everybody's measured. Make sense?
Yep.
So when Yeshua came, it didn't flip the way the church says it flipped. It flipped the exact opposite. When Yeshua came and made the new covenant, he put Torah into our hearts so that we can know and do and teach Torah and become greater and greater and greater in the kingdom that hasn't come yet. Just the opposite of what the church teaches. And I'm sorry, but that's the truth.
Yeah.
It's just the opposite. All right, so here's the picture I want in your head. I've done everything I could do to drive this into your head. I spent all day yesterday doing it. I created a picture for you that I want to brainwash you with. When we think about rank in the kingdom, think about a banquet table with the biggest guy, the guy or girl who has the most understanding of Torah up at the head of the table, and it just comes down farther and farther and farther and farther until you get to the katan, to the least. All right? Here it is. Here's the picture.
Yeah.
I made this picture from about 15 photographs. And I Frankensteined it together.
Yep.
So you can have a picture in your mind of what this was like and is going to be like. Don't picture an American banquet, an American wedding banquet. This is how it's done. On the floor, everybody reclining. That's why Yeshua said they will recline. They will come from the east and the west and recline with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. All right, let's go to Matthew chapter 8. And I will hopefully be able to drive this picture into your heart. Matthew chapter 8. Do you know why I always use those words? Drive it into you. Do you know why I say that? Because that's what it says in the very last verse of Ecclesiastes. That the wise man drives the words of wisdom into someone. How it has to be done. Okay. Matthew chapter 8, verse 11. Look at this. I say to you, many shall come from east and west and recline with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the sons of the kingdom will be cast out into outer darkness. In that place there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. In other words, outside the tent in which the wedding feast takes place. So, all these nations, all these Gentiles are going to come from east and west and come to sit with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom to recline and to enjoy their rank. All right, now go to Luke chapter 14, and this should make sense. This should make sense now. Luke 14:7. He began speaking a parable to the invited guests, where he noticed how they had been picking out the places of honor at the table. Now remember, there's no table. It's on the floor. It's called at table, just as an idiom. Saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, don't take the place of honor, or else somebody more distinguished than you. Whoa! Who makes them distinguished? Who says? Who says?
God.
That? Oh no, you can't sit there. That's for somebody who's more distinguished. He's the mayor of the city.
The host.
It's not what it's talking about. It's talking about kingdom. It's talking about knowing yourself, where you stand in that rank. Are you high? Are you middle? Are you 3/4 of the way down? Are you the least? Where do you picture yourself? Somebody more distinguished than you may have been invited by him. And he who invited you both shall come and say to you, who invited you both shall come and say to you, give place to this man. And then in disgrace, you proceed to occupy the last place, the acharit, the smallest, the least place. That's the word acharit in Hebrew, the last, the afterword. But when you are invited, go and recline at the acharit place. Why? Because that guy way up there at the head is going to go, hey, guy, come up here. You don't belong back there. Come on up. So that when the one who was invited has invited you, goodness gracious, so that when the one who has invited you comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Didn't say how high, just says higher. Then you will have honor in the sight of all who are at the table with you. Wow, that guy's got more authority than all those guys that he just walked past.
Kids there.
Yeah, right. Put yourself at the kids' table, right? That's exactly right. Exactly right. You don't know how right that is.
Yeah.
So, I want this picture in your mind so you understand rank is not like the army. Rank is like the wedding feast in the kingdom where everybody's reclining according to their authority. All right, so who do you think in the Torah had the most authority of anybody? Who do you think it was? Abraham?
Moshe.
Moshe? Yeshua wasn't alive then. I said in the Torah, just Torah, for the first 5 words. Moshe? Okay.
Adam.
Adam? Interesting. I wonder where Adam is going to be in the kingdom.
Right.
You know, I never thought about that. That is a good question. I wonder where Adam is going to be in that rank.
He had complete authority over the entire planet.
Okay.
I mean, nobody had more authority than him.
Here's how the rank works. Hillel said, my self-abasement, that means like making myself small, is my exaltation. And my exaltation, my height, is my self-abasement. He got this from the Torah. He got this from Moshe.
Right.
All right, Deuteronomy 34:10, very last words of the Torah tell us how this works. The very last words say, verse 10, since then no prophet has risen in Israel like Moshe. Why? Because God knew him face to face. Well, that's fantastic, but how did he do that? It tells us, for all the signs and wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt against Pharaoh, all his servants and all his land, and for all the mighty hand, and for all the Morah Gadol, the great fear, the great awesomeness, which Moshe did, not God, Moshe. So, Moshe had the most gadol anything in the Torah. He had the most gadol, the biggest anything. Acts, works, fear, strength, power, anything. He had the most. Why? Numbers 12, 3 exclamation mark tells us why. That's what it says. Numbers 12, 3 exclamation mark.
12:31.
No, it's an exclamation mark. Numbers 12:3 tells us why. This is why. Now, the man Moshe was very humble, more than any man who was on the face of the earth. That's why he was the most gadol. Why? Because he was the most katan. He was the smallest. Now, the word humility is anava. Say anava. Anava, and it means to be bent. It actually means to bend. What's the word? Like to be flexible.
Prostrate.
No, not the word prostrate. When somebody who can go with the flow.
Flexible?
No, not flexible. Say it again. No, like
Durable?
durable is close. Somebody who can bear pain is what it means. Somebody who can put up with something blowing, like wheat or barley. Yeah, but there's a word for it. Resilient. That's it.
Resilient.
It's the word resilient. Humility is the word resilient. It's not,
I feel so bad for my God. I'm a nothing before Hashem.
that's not what it means. It means resilient. That means you bear up under pain. That's what anava means. It's the same word for poverty. Same word. Well, durable's okay, but resilient is better because it means you bounce back. And it is what barley and wheat and grain is called because it bends in the wind, but it snaps back. So Moshe was the most humble on the earth. That's why he was the most gadol. Now, people like to talk about Yeshua teaching this kingdom principle. Well, it's right here in the Torah. Moshe is the Torah, isn't he?
Yeah.
In the New Testament, it says they went, you're going to be going, in Acts 15, it says you're going to be going to the synagogue every Shabbat and learning
Moshe.
Right? So Moshe is the Torah. And he was, almost the Torah personified. Almost. He is the Torah personified in the New Testament. But when he was alive, he was almost the Torah personified. Almost the Word became flesh. Almost. So he was the best picture we have of how this works. Now, this is funny, me teaching this one, because you could never say about me up until God broke me that I was Amabah. I wrote a novel called Living from the Inside Out, and on page 413, I believe it is this the second to last chapter, or third to last chapter, and it's called Humility Still Escapes Me. And it was the book is semi-autobiographical, and I just could not get a hold of humility. I couldn't. I tried and I tried and I tried and Eileen tried and tried for 25 years or so to get me to be humble, and it didn't work. You know why? I didn't have a 9-to-5 job. That's what it comes down to. I didn't have a regular 8-to-4 job. And then when I lost the congregation and God spent 12 years breaking me, I started teaching in public school, and it was like, O-M-J, O-M-Yo. I mean, you gotta be kidding me. This is what I'm expecting. No way. Forget that. No, you're gonna do it. No, what? Yes, you are. You're gonna do it. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. And it took 12 years. And then after that, I ended up roofing for 6 months, and that was even worse. And you'd have to ask my wife, but I think if you ask her if I have learned humility, I hope she would say, oh yeah, to some extent. At least that.
Katan.
Katan. So, that's what this whole thing is based on, and I can't believe I'm teaching it. I never taught this in my whole life. You know why? Because I knew I didn't understand this. I knew I didn't. So I stayed away from it. All right, now we're going to look at the verses that you've probably heard. Now that there's some basis to understand them, let's go to Luke chapter 9. Hopefully, I've built a basis for you to understand these verses. Remember, picture that wedding banquet in your head. Luke 9, verse 48. Verse 46. An argument arose among them as to which of them was the gadol, the gadolest, the gadol me'od, the greatest. Why are they arguing about this?
Pride.
These are the apostles. You think it's pride? These are the Talmudim. Curiosity. I mean, in my mind, I would think it's because they don't know how to judge it. I mean, they got the Torah. The Torah says it, but it's kind of hard to see. Do we judge according to authority? Do we judge according to money? Do we judge according to how much people we've got influence over? What do we judge by? Well, Yeshua's always talking to Peter. And he cast out 47 demons, but I cast out 53 over there in Tiberias, remember? I mean, how do we judge? So they're talking about it. I mean, we read it, we're like, the apostles are so stupid. Maybe, I don't know. But they're arguing about it. Yeshua, verse 47, knowing what they were thinking in their heart, took a child and stood him by his side and said, whoever receives this child in my authority receives me. Whoever receives me receives him who sent me. For he who is katan among you, this is the one who's the gadol. The katan is the gadol. The gadol is the katan. Just depends on how you're ranking them. Depends on how you judge it. Matthew chapter 11. 11:11. Now suppose one of you... That's not it. Wrong verse. Oh, I'm in Luke. Sorry. Back to Matthew 11:11. Truly I say to you, among those born of women, there has not arisen more gadol than John the Immerser. But he who is the katan, the least, the acharit, in the kingdom of heaven is more gadol than he is. So therefore, the ones who are in the kingdom already have higher rank than John the Immerser, who was Elijah. Okay? Just by virtue of the fact that they're in the kingdom. Matthew 18. All depends on how you judge it. All depends on what your plumb line is. At that time, the Talmidim came to Yeshua saying, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Not the greatest of us, the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Look at me, please. Is this a parallel passage? So the one that said that they were having an argument amongst themselves about who was the greatest?
I don't think so.
Yes, it is. This is a parallel passage. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. That was in Luke 9. This is in Matthew 18. These are parallel passages. You're going to see in a second. Because it ends the same way the other one ended. Look at me. They weren't arguing about themselves being the greatest. They were arguing about who's the greatest in the kingdom. Elijah, Abraham, Adam, Moshe. Who's the greatest? You, Yeshua? Me? Because I cast out 347 demons in Tiberias? They're talking about the kingdom. Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And he called a child to himself and set them before him. He said, truly I say to you, unless you are changed and become like children, in other words, born again, you will not enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever then humbles himself, makes himself anava, resilient, like Moses, like this child, he is the gadol, the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Parallel passage. This is about the kingdom, not about the disciples. All right, let's go to... Oh, and then he says, in 18:1, he says, the gadol me'od. That means the big most big, the greatest. The gadol me'od in the kingdom is the katan among you. So if you want to be great in the kingdom, what do? You make yourself like what? Okay, let's say it again, because I didn't hear the right answer. This is the only time I want you to talk back to me. He says, if you want to be gadol me'od in the kingdom, you make yourselves like...
Service.
Thank you. Moshe. The servant of all of Israel. The most humble on the earth. Right?
Yeah.
Make yourself like Moshe. Moshe is synonymous with Torah. The Torah is not about being big. The Torah is about being small. The Torah is not being about being packed together and doing things properly. It's about being small and stupid and making a fool of yourself and putting yourself out there for people to judge the fire out of you. That's Judaism. It's not being, ritually perfect and every tiny little granularly flawless. It's about doing Torah and teaching Torah and just being humble and small and normal and nice and just a servant to everybody. That's Torah. It's not about doing stuff. It's about being stuff. Because you do the stuff and it talks to you, it tells you stuff, and you change and you become less packed together and less perfect and less, pristine. Like a child who just was out playing in the mud. Just a kid. Matthew 23. 11. But the greatest among you shall be your Eved. Here's another Hebrew word. Say Eved. Eved. That's how you say servant. Eved. Avdo. Serve the Lord with joy, with happiness. Ivdu. Serve. Serve Him. Ivdu. And an Eved is a servant. So, if you want to be great in the kingdom, you got to be like Moses, the servant of everybody. Go to Luke chapter 22. Luke 22. Luke 22:24. There arose a dispute among them as to which of them was regarded as the greatest. And he said to them, the kings of the Gentiles, the rulers of the Gentiles, lord it over them. That's what makes them great. And those who have authority over them are called benefactors. But that's not how it is with you guys. Let him who is the gadol among you become as the youngest. He doesn't say you must become like a child. You have to be like a child. It's a parallel passage. He's saying you must become like a child, like the youngest. How do you say youngest in Hebrew? Acharit, the last. Become like the guy at the bottom of the banquet table, the smallest, the youngest, right? The most humble. For let's see. Then the greatest, the gadol among you, become like the acharit, and the leader like the eved, like the servant, the rosh, the leader, the head, like the servant, like Moses. For who is greater, the one who reclines? There it is. It's talking about reclining at the table. Who's more important? Who's greater? The one who reclines or the one who serves? Who's the one greater? The one who's reclining and eating, or the one who serves? Is it? No, it's the one who reclines. I just told you this. At the table, the guy who's at the head of the table has the greatest faith. He's the gadol. That's why he's at the head of the table. And it goes down in order to the acharit, the katan, to the last. Who's greater? The dude eating at the table or the servant running back and forth filling their cups? The one at the table. Well, how do you get there? By being like the dude running around serving. Be like the servant. But I am the one among you, I'm among you like the one who serves. So if you want to be at the head of the table, serve the table. And then you'll get to be at the table. Make sense?
Yeah.
So those of you who know Scripture, you better let it go. You think you know Scripture? You better let it go. I had to. Let it go. You don't know anything. You don't know anything. Nothing. When I finally came to that conclusion, then I started learning, really. I mean, I was learning, but I really started learning how all this stuff works. When I let it go. I don't know anything. My self-exaltation is my self-abasement. Self-abasement. Putting myself down. That's my exaltation. That's what Shaul said, isn't it? Remember Shaul said the same thing? Paul said the same thing?
Yeah.
I glory in my, how does it choose? I glory in my infirmity.
Weakness, yeah.
My weaknesses, same thing. My self-exaltation is me making myself like a little stupid kid. All right, last thing. 1 Chronicles 23. A whole bunch of chapters here that you can read on your own. You should read them on your own, because if you can get your head wrapped around what the plumb line really is, and you read this with new eyes, I think it's really going to speak to your spirit about the kingdom. Here's what I mean. What are you going to be doing in the kingdom? What's your job going to be? Do you know? I mean specifically, what's your job going to be? Do you know? How many people are you going to be teaching? You should know that. What's your job going to be? Okay. Here's what I'm asking. There's a whole bunch of jobs here listed. And they may not be the jobs you think. In 1 Chronicles 23, this is the last words of David. And as his last words, he sets up the whole kingdom. And he divides everybody into their jobs. Verse 3, the Levites were numbered from 30 years old and upward, and their number, blah, blah, blah. And these oversee the work of the house of the Lord. And these were officers and judges, and these were gatekeepers who praise the Lord with the instruments which David. Okay, he starts laying out the jobs. What's the very, very first jobs he gives? What were the very first jobs he said? Priests and Levites. Very first job. And then he goes on. Then he divided them into their divisions. Of Gershonites, from verse 7. Of Kahat, the priests, from verse 12 and on. Of Merari, from verse 21 and on. And then he says the duties of the Levites and the priests. And he gives a bunch of those. Then in chapter 24, then he gives the divisions of the Levites. And there's 24 of them. And they're not all the same size, by the way. And then in chapter 25, look at this. David and the commanders of the army. That's other jobs. Commanders of the army. And in rank, it says there were commanders of hundreds, commanders of thousands, commanders of 30, commanders of 3. Set apart for the service some of the sons of Asaph and Heman and Yedutun who were to prophesy with lyres, harps, and cymbals. And he gives those numbers. Musicians, right. Musicians who were prophesying with their words. So when the church says to you, what am I saying when the church says to you? When you're talking to people in the church and you're discussing, what are you going to do in heaven? And they say, well, in heaven, I'm just going to praise the Lord. No, it's much more specific than that. Where are you going to praise Him? How are you going to praise Him? With what are you going to praise Him? It's very specific in the Scriptures. And remember, David set up the kingdom as a picture of the Messianic kingdom. So you can know what your job is going to be. You read through this and something hits you, might be your job. So they cast lots for all the musicians. And then chapter 26, the gatekeepers. I bet you don't even know what gatekeepers do you? You know what gatekeepers do? You think you picture like a guard who stands there with a sword or a spear at the gate? No. A gatekeeper is somebody who makes sure that the people come in like a bailiff. Like a bailiff in a court. Who says, what's your case? We have case number whatever. Judge, make sure that you've got the paperwork. We got to have this set up. We need our judges lined up on the walls here. All right, you can come forward now, state your case. That's a gatekeeper who makes judgments in the court. And there's going to be lots of them, lots of gatekeepers in the kingdom, because there's going to be lots of judgments to be made in the kingdom. And then he gives all the divisions of the gatekeepers. Now chapter 26, verse 20. And the Levites, their relatives. And then it starts talking about the treasurers. There's thousands of treasurers in the temple, in the kingdom. Verse 27, they dedicated part of the spoil won in battles to repair the house of the Lord. So that's a big job there. And then 29. These are the apostles. Verse 29. These are the apostles. As for the Israelites, Hananiah and his sons were assigned to outside duties for Israel as officers and judges. They were sent out. Those are apostles, shlichot, sent out, or shlachim, sent out to be judges and officers outside of Jerusalem, outside of Judah. 1,700 capable men had charge of the affairs of Israel west of the Jordan and for all the work of the Lord in the service of the king. And then it talks about Hebronites. And these were outstanding capability were found among them. And these were people that were apostles. Thousands of them were apostles. It talks about their apostleship and where they went. And then in chapter 27, then it gives the divisions of the army. And it gives the rank of the people in the army. Now remember, this is in the kingdom. What is rank judged by with that plumb line? Judaism. That's how it's going to be. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be an army. It means that the army rank is determined by Judaism. Not like it is now. And then verse 16 of 27. Then it gives the officers of the tribes. This is another huge job. These are people that have tens of thousands of people under them. Like mayors and not like politicians now. How is their rank determined in the kingdom?
By doing and teaching Torah.
By Torah, by doing Torah, by Judaism. And that's how they get those people under them. All right, and then verse 25. These are the ones I like. Except for the apostles, I like that too. This guy, Azmavit, had charge of the king's storehouses. Jonathan had charge of the storehouses in the countryside, in the cities, in the villages, in the towers. Who else did that? Who had ownership over the storehouses out amongst the people and in the cities? Good, Joseph, right. Joseph, this is what he did. And then in verse 26, Ezri had charge of the agricultural workers who tilled the soil. Shimei had charge of the vineyards. Zavdi had charge of the produce of the vineyards and the wine cellars. Baal Hanan, who else had charge of the wine cellars in the Bible? He had charge of the wine. You don't know? Nehemiah. All it says is he was the taster of the wine for the king. That means he had oversight over all the wine cellars and the wine and the produce that came in. Verse 28, Baal Hanan had charge of the olive and sycamore trees. Joash had charge of the oil, all the oil that came in. Shitri had charge of the cattle. Shaphat had charge of the cattle in the valleys. Ovil the Ishmaelite had charge of the camels. In order to be in charge of the camels in the kingdom, you are judged according to Judaism.
We are in the right place.
Glad you moved it. Yedekiah had charge of the donkeys. Yaziz had charge of the flocks. All right, these are all just as important. Every job is just as important as every other job. Jonathan, David's uncle, was a counselor to David. That's a job. And a scribe, that's a job. The ones who write the Torah. Yehiel tutored the king's children. In other words, he was a teacher of the Torah. Ahithophel was counselor to the king. Hushai, here's a big job. Look at this. Hushai was the king's friend. Think about that. Who's going to be Yeshua's friend? Who's going to have that job? You should be able to tell me right now. Who's that? Who's the friend of God? Good. Abraham. Abraham. It says in Isaiah, he was the friend of God. Well, he's going to be the friend of Yeshua. It's a big job. And that's why he's the head, the top, the head of the table. All right, those are jobs in the kingdom. So read through this. Maybe some will jump out at you and you're going to know what you're going to be doing in the kingdom. But I guarantee you, the only way to practice for what your job is now, job is in the kingdom, is to do it now. And it must be done according to learning and doing and teaching Judaism. That's the bottom line. Yeah? So, get this in your head. Get that firmly smashed into your brain pan. That wedding feast with everybody in order. Where are you going to be? If the kingdom, I've talked to a lot of Christians about this over the years, and most of them, not all of them, some of them are smart, but most of them, you know what they say? They say, well, you know, I'm just going to be humble and serve my Lord. And so I say to them, how? They don't know. But we can know. We can know. The more Judaism you do and teach, the more you're going to have a vision for what you're going to be doing in the kingdom. I can't say much more about it than that, but except for the fact that I've been doing this for 40 years almost. And I'm telling you that every time I do and teach Torah, it gives me more of a vision of how much authority I have or don't have in the kingdom. And I was deceived for a long time about how much authority I had in the kingdom. But then when I humbled myself, everything flipped. Let's pray. Abba, thank you that you are Anava. You are humble. You are resilient. Nothing shakes you. Nothing bothers you. Nothing disturbs you. Nothing knocks you off your throne. Nothing makes you mad. Nothing, just gets you frustrated. That you are humble. The most humble. And so you sent Yeshua to show that. And I thank you that you sent Moshe to us to show us that. And Lord, I thank you that Torah, Judaism, Moshe is the way to find out what humility is. And ask that you teach us your ways about anava, about humility, about rank. Show us what our rank really is in the kingdom, Lord. So we're not deceived about it. We're not thinking wrongly about it. And ask that you would reveal it to us, Lord. Show us our job. Show us our job. Show us what you want us to do so that we grow in emunah, we grow in faith, and we go higher up in that wedding table, that wedding feast in the kingdom. And I'm looking forward to it so much, Lord, if for no other reason than to get to hang out with all the ones who were above me at the table and get to learn. In the name of Yeshua, thank you, Abba. Amen. Shabbat shalom. I'm going to do the Aharonic benediction right now. When we do this, you do not have to be under a tallit. Don't know where you got that from, but it's not Jewish. It's not biblical. You're receiving a blessing from me. I'm the Cohen. I am a Cohen. I'm a family of Kohen. And I'm blessing you. I'm putting a blessing of God's name on you. So you don't have to put a tallit on or anything like that. You just receive it. You just receive it from me. Hey, Chris, do you know the Aharonic benediction? No? Okay. You're going to need to learn that. Because you're a Cohen, right? You do what you want. I have to stand. You don't have to stand. Right.
Yavarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha Ya'er Adonai panav alecha v'yikunecha Yisa Adonai panav alecha v'yasem lecha Shalom. The Lord bless you and keep you. Make the Lord make his face to shine upon you and
be gracious unto you, and lift up his countenance upon you, and give you shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.